That's the only way you're going to scale and be able to become bigger than yourself. Failure is the step before success. I would tell them that home ownership is a plan. So you got to stay in the traffic, always learning. So revitalizing the American dream. It's the most important investment you can make for your future wealth growth.
Welcome to the Deal Flow podcast. I'm Michaela, founder of Apex Rev AI, where we help real estate professionals grow their businesses using AI and smarter systems. Today, I'm joined by David Tucker, better known as Tucker. He's a developer, builder, investor, and broker who has spent decades building businesses across multiple sectors of real estate. Thanks so much for joining us today, Tucker.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, Tucker, you've done just about everything in real estate, but what I found interesting is that you didn't originally set out to start a career in real estate. So, do you mind walking us through how you got started?
Sure. Yeah. Very early in life, I was doing very well living in Houston, Texas, just working in fine dining restaurants. And my fiance at the time and I decided to buy some land to build a house, just kind of learn, follow the American dream path. And in the process of doing that, I met a gentleman that introduced me to a real estate career, which I fought for at least 6 months just because things were going well. And I didn't know anything about real estate or what it meant to have a real estate career. And so it took a lot for him to convince me. But once he did, I never looked back. It's been my passion ever since.
Awesome. So, you didn't really have any idea at that point when you acquired that first piece of property that it would completely change your career then?
Not at all. I didn't even know what closing costs were when we closed on the property out there. Just thought you paid the exact amount of money and that was it. So I didn't know there were fees or anything. It was a very ground up and educational process.
Nice. So, was it a lot of learning on the job originally?
So the company that I went to work for to start out had a very intense training program, which was very helpful. Getting started, I really didn't understand the value of the training program or what to take from it, but they did help get me into a sales role, which then I learned over 9 years with that company to do many, many other things through self-teaching and just the excitement of learning the different avenues of real estate, all the way from the development side to the sales side to the home building, and just there's so many different aspects. It was just like drinking from a fire hose.
I'm sure. Well, that's great. I know you mentioned in our previous call that the development side is something that you gravitated towards. What was it about that that kind of hooked you?
It sounds a little corny, but I love the end result, right? When you see somebody that is enjoying their land or their home, they're having a get together, they're having family over, and holidays and things like that. There's a lot of excitement for me that goes into that. And the development side of it is how you get there. So when you walk up on a piece of land or really anywhere and you say, one day that's going to be a subdivision and people are going to live here, and to be able to put all those puzzle pieces together, that's what excites me. It takes a lot of steps to get there and a lot of time and dedication. And so once it's finished, there's a huge reward for me seeing that happen.
Awesome. So, you mentioned you spent nearly a decade with a development company before you launched your own business. Looking back, what were some of the most valuable lessons you learned from those early years?
I would probably say I was like everybody else who's working for another company. I felt like I knew everything, like I could do it better. I had that entrepreneur spirit. So when I went out and started my own company, I didn't know how valuable each of the lessons were that I was learning with another company. First and foremost, I'll tell you, systems are the most important lesson that I learned without knowing I was learning it. That's the only way you're going to scale and be able to become bigger than yourself. There's only so much time in a day, and you can't do everything. So you got to have systems and processes in place for other people to follow and to help grow your vision. And so that's what I would say was my most important lesson learned.
That's awesome. I think that's very important because, like you said, if you don't have those systems in place, you're going to run into a lot of problems later on.
Yes, yes, across the board.
So I know you started your company around 2008, which, as you know, was an interesting time to jump into real estate. What was that experience like, and what were some of those challenges early on?
So I got very fortunate in 2008 that I had a huge database of people that were looking to build custom housing. And so when I went out on my own early in 2008, we had almost a dozen contracts to build custom housing, and everybody was able to get loans at this time. So I got to watch a lot of my friends and buddies that were in the building business They lost a lot during that time. And then, so I got to learn through other people's pain, unfortunately. But we hit our own pain point in 2009 when we finished these houses up and nobody could get a loan to save their life to build a custom house. So we had to start pivoting like everybody else, going into remodeling. Banks were not giving loans for development, custom housing, spec loans for spec housing. Just everything was tightened up. So in order to keep things moving, you had to be able to pivot. And, you know, through 2009 through 2012, we pivoted probably three different times. But I learned a lot in that time period because you have to be prepared for these cycles as they come, and they will come. This is my third cycle to go through in our current economy. And each one of these cycles, although they're different with their own hurdles, it's taught me that you just have to be able to pivot and change your direction a little bit, still keep your vision, but just go about it a different way.
Yeah, good point. Especially since, like you said, there's been multiple cycles, even just since you've started. And that seems to be what separates the people that make it and those that don't during those difficult times.
It's very true.
So, was there ever a point early on in your career during that rough time that you questioned whether you were going to make it? And how did you overcome those challenges? I know you said you pivoted, but did you always just feel like you were going to go full steam ahead?
I think you have to feel like you're going to go full steam ahead all the time. Absolutely. There were numerous times where I was like, why am I doing this? It's painful. It's a struggle. A lot of self doubt gets in. At one point, I read something that was kind of impactful is basically failure is the step before success. And so you have to understand if you look at any successful company out there, if you truly look at their history and their growth, they've not only failed once, but they failed miserably multiple times. And everybody loves to look at the successes, but nobody wants to look at the failures or talk about them. And those failures are what shape you and make you stronger as you move forward. When I say we had to pivot into multiple different aspects of real estate, 2012 and 13, we started buying houses and fixing them up, and then we would own or finance them. So I started learning more about how to manage mortgage notes and trade mortgage notes and the power of mortgages. And so through every failure, there's valuable lessons that come out of it. And I learned to stay focused on the lessons that I'm learning in that failure. And that's what's kept me going through the years. Got to stay focused.
Yeah, for sure. And so let's kind of go into currently you own wind and water homes. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the mission behind it?
Sure. I get asked that a lot, actually, what our mission is and what our purpose is. Our mission statement is to change the world and make it a better place, to enhance it, not only through the product that we put out, but through the work environment that we create. And a major part of that mission statement is also revitalizing the American dream. I believe the American dream of home ownership has kind of dissipated. There's a lot of negativity around it right now. And I believe people have lost the value of it's the most important investment you can make for your future wealth growth. And so our mission is to be able to put out a product that's a little bit better and teach people along the way how they can manage home ownership to increase their financial future. So we build entry level housing. We also do multifamily construction. Affordable housing is what most people call it. And we stick to that market now, even though we've done everything in the real estate world. That's our primary focus so that we can achieve our mission by helping people get into housing.
Yeah, and I love that you're looking to revive the American dream of home ownership. Do you think the younger generations have lost sight of that value of home ownership?
I think it's twofold. I think you're correct with they've lost sight of it, but it's also hard to have sight of anything you've never been taught. And so I think the education of home ownership is just, I'm in the industry and I don't see it. And if I'm in the industry and I don't see it, somebody who's not in the industry is never going to see it unless they go look for it. And so I think there just needs to be a platform where people can get it and understand it and learn it.
Yeah, so if you were talking directly to someone young, out of college, out of high school, who thinks home ownership is out of reach, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that home ownership is a plan. It's not about whether it's in reach or not. Once you learn how to get there, you make a plan. It might take a year or 2 years, but as long as you've got a plan, you'll get there. There's a famous saying out there is if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so any young person, and especially in today's market, can't be expected to jump right out of college and buy a house. I think if I remember the stats correctly, just recently, the first time home buyer moved from the late 20s to the early 30s now. So, with everything changing, incomes, prices, things like that, it's extended the timeline before somebody buys their first home. That's not a bad thing. As long as you work towards getting to that point where you can buy your first home and build that financial future, it doesn't matter where it starts. You just have to start.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like you said, it's not something that's going to be immediate out of college right away, but as long as it's as part of your plan, then it's something that you're building towards. So, great advice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the immediate gratification is where we're at today, right?
Yes, for sure. Instant gratification, everything's so quick now with technology, so for sure. So today you're focused largely on entry-level housing and multifamily development you had mentioned. Why those 2 areas specifically?
Those two areas are my passion point because the amount of work it takes to put a house on the ground, to have somebody to be able to buy it, I want to give it to those people that have never had it before or that really want to value it. The multifamily side of our business is more to have a platform to be able to teach people how to get out of renting and into a house, whether it be our house or anybody's house. That's why we stay focused on that particular market.
Great. So you're active in multiple states and constantly meeting with investors, developers, and operators. What are some of the biggest trends you're seeing right now?
Man, trends. It's funny because if you look at a macro level, those trends, everybody kind of follows each other to the major markets. We deal in the secondary markets where we can get more affordability. And so when you look at trends in that standpoint, most of my competition is trying to go smaller and get a price point where we want to stay where we've got a good size in our house and still meet the price point. As far as an industry as a whole, affordability is tough to meet, especially with today's pricing. Investors have different requirements, different expectations. A lot of your large funds are sitting on the sidelines waiting right now for legislation to go through, waiting for things to happen in the market. So it makes it tough for the rest of us to go out and kind of raise capital. And that's important to everyone in society because if we can't go raise capital and we can't put the deal on the ground, then we won't have houses. I think and again, don't quote me on the stats, but we're a million houses short in the US right now. And we are only able to put on, maybe a couple 100,000 a year. So we're not even at a point where we can satisfy the housing need. And if all these components aren't working together, then we're never going to satisfy the housing need. So, these trends, everybody's wanting to get to affordability. And I don't think anybody has the answer, but working towards that trend is where a lot of my big competition is pushing right now.
That's a crazy statistic. I hadn't realized that was such a high number for the housing. So, most people struggle to run a business even in just one city, one state. And now you have expanded from Texas into Georgia. What has allowed you to successfully expand out of Texas?
Man, one word, systems. As long as you got systems, people to follow, you can expand just about anywhere. In today's world, it's even easier because we have all the AI and the software and things like that. I could be sitting in Texas and watch my projects in Georgia without even being there. And it's not having a camera on site. We have people in place and they have systems to log stuff. And I can watch a house get built or a development get done from, 1,500 miles away. Much easier today than it was when I started.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's great to mention how much right now businesses are relying on these systems and how you said it's really helped you to be able to scale. What tools would you say have had the biggest impact on your business in the last few years?
Tools that would have the biggest impact, mostly is going to be the softwares for management. AI is a big thing that's coming in now, learning how to pull all that together. We've been really, really focused the last 9 months on learning AI. We don't want to get left behind. We know it's the future. I think one of the other biggest tools that we have is we constantly train and we constantly revitalize our mission in our staff. And so at the end of the day, we're still all people. And in my industry, we're putting something on the ground that AI cannot do yet. Robots can't do yet. We're practicing 3D printing homes, but there's still a lot of other trades that have to come in after you 3D print a home. So it's an industry where it's a hands-on. And as long as we have the tools of AI, software management, CRMs, pulling all that together for our reports, automations with notifications and communication, Those are all huge, huge tools that help run our systems. I think that's still one of the biggest problems in a lot of companies is communication, even though we live in today's time where we have so much communication at our fingertips.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so great that you've embraced technology and AI and you've implemented those into your business and have really seen how it's helped you scale, be more process driven, and just help you grow.
Or I wasn't always that way. So I don't even like social media.
I was going to say, what changed and kind of, like you said, you felt like if you didn't do it, you're going to be left behind. Is that kind of what got you interested?
Yeah, I think it's getting so much at our fingertips, right? The phone, I use it to make phone calls and send texts and emails, but it does so much more of the stuff, right? And so when you start seeing everybody do it, and that's what their expectations are, you either learn it or you get left behind. Even my daughter's that way. She probably helps me with my phone more than I do.
That's true. The younger generation is great at it. So, if you could automate one thing in your business tomorrow, what would that be?
So if I could automate the closing process for a house, that would be awesome. The lack of consistency in how that process works. I know you would think it would be a process that's pretty easy to get through, but it is a challenge. It still needs people, still needs somebody to come in and follow up every day. It's just crazy the amount of work it takes just to get one house closed.
Yeah, I bet. That sounds like a good one. So, you've mentioned processes being able to be the main factor in helping you scale. What are you looking forward to in the next 5 years accomplishing in your business?
So we have a goal of hitting 648 closings a year. That's nine subdivisions running 72 a year. That number is important to us because that puts us in one of the top 100 builders. At that point, we know we can start making a difference for our true mission. So it's not really about the money or the level. It's more about when you get in the top 100 builders, people start noticing you more, you start getting more brand recognition, you're on the list. And so that's our 5 year goal right now. On the flip side of that, we also have a goal of having 10,000 units on the ground for rental through multifamily so that we can start making an impact for teaching people home ownership. We believe those numbers will help change kind of the face of home ownership long term.
Yeah, those are some big numbers, but some great goals. So, you spend a lot of time attending conferences, meeting family offices, talking with capital partners. How important is it for you to continue learning and stay plugged into the market?
I learned something from somebody probably 10 years ago, maybe 12. And it's one phrase: if you're not in the traffic, you get left behind. So you got to stay in the traffic, always learning, always connecting, always talking to people, always looking for new ways to do things, keeping up with the market. There's just so much to keep up with. So if you don't stay in the traffic, you get left behind.
For sure. How has your leadership style changed from when you first started to now?
So I think my leadership style has changed in giving more autonomy to the people that I lead to lead their people, if that makes sense. One of the hardest things when you're growing a business is you want to touch every piece. And I mentioned earlier, it's hard to do everything on your own. And so I've given more power to the people to run their own departments and handle their own stuff rather than me having to be involved in every single detail. It sounds like something that might be easy to do, but trust me, for a type A personality, it's very, very difficult to just give up that control and let them lead their team versus me being the sole leader in the whole entire group. And so it's allowed me more time to do the things that I need to do. And so it's taken a much better role and it's had a much better effect. The other side of it is the energy. My energy will extend to the next person's energy. So if I have low energy, somebody else is going to have low energy. So I've changed my leadership style to be very, very focused on positive energy because we've got a choice every day to wake up and be happy or be mad. And so I just wake up every day and be happy and try to extend that into my staff.
I love that. That's great. So, looking back at your career, what would you say is one accomplishment that you're most proud of?
I don't know. My initial thought would be my daughter, but as far as career goes, I think my most proud accomplishment is expanding into a different state. For years I feared it, and when we did it, and we've been there for over 2 years now, and it's doing well. It's eliminated that fear from going anywhere. And so it's opened up a whole new world for our expansion in the company.
Yeah. Are you looking forward to expanding into other markets and other states as well?
Yes. Yeah, we've already put property under contract in 2 other states in the Southeast, as well as we were expanding here in Texas locally, continuing on both ends.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
So, what's a lesson that you learned the hard way that every entrepreneur should hear?
Mm, there's so many. I don't know how to pinpoint one other than trust yourself. Don't ever question it. Don't be afraid of making the wrong decision. We make hundreds of decisions, thousands of decisions a day, and statistically, you cannot get them all right. So just know you're going to make a wrong decision. I learned that the hard way. You know, I've made a lot of decisions. I used to beat myself over the ones that were wrong. We just can't get them all right. And so you make the decision that you have today with the information you have today and hope that the future brings what your decision helped. We don't know the future, right? It's always easy to look back and say what I should have done. But when you focus on making a decision and moving, that's how things get done. If you let fear control you, that was a hard lesson for me. I let fear control me from a lot of things. And now that I've let go of that, it's made a huge difference in our growth.
Nice. So, for someone listening today who wants to build a career in real estate and start, what do you think is the first step they should take, and what kind of advice would you give them?
I think most people would say that go get a real estate license, but I'm the direct opposite. I wouldn't do that. I would find you a mentor who's been through it, at least had 3 to 5 years of experience dealing in the market, doing actual deals, and learn from other people's mistakes. I take people on as, I don't know if you want to call it an apprentice or whatever, but I've got several people that call me up and just talk through deals and talk through different real estate, all the way from commercial leases to house rentals to building a BTR community to everything. I just had a call earlier today with a gentleman who's doing a simple land purchase, and it's a farm and ranch, and he's worried about how to plat the property. There's simple questions, but they come up all the time. And I think the best thing to do is find somebody that you respect and you would have as a mentor that you know in real estate, and just learn from them, be a sponge, help them put in the time and effort to learn how that works. Because the rest of the paperwork and things that you learn at real estate school is great. But if you don't know where to apply it or how to use it or anything else, it's just like if you looked it up online and read a contract. There's so much to real estate that if you find a mentor that's willing to take you on, be their intern, their apprentice, or whatever you want to call yourself, but just be a sponge and learn from them.
That's great. I love how you pour into the newbies, giving them your advice because, like you said, it's different learning it on paper than in the real world and having all that experience. So that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tucker, for joining us today. I've joined this conversation and you've given us a lot of great tips and insights. For our listeners that want to connect with you and learn more about you, where can they find you online or connect with your team?
You can find me on LinkedIn. We have a Wind and Water Homes LinkedIn page. My personal is David Tucker LinkedIn. We do have Facebook, Instagram. You can find us at Wind and Water Homes.
Awesome. And I will link David Tucker's information, everything in the description below, so you can reach out to him. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you for our listeners for tuning into the Deal Flow. We will see you in our next episode.